Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. All of nature speaks of a balance between male and female. It isn't just one side or the other. Everything takes both. And much reading of the Bible that's been interpreted from a dogma standpoint in churches and in mainstream understanding of Christianity really glorifies the male side and seems to set that forward. I know my reading, maybe it's not fair to say my reading of the Bible, what I was taught growing up in a church was definitely more on the side of the male head of the household, and we see a lot of male stories in the Bible, or at least those are the stories that get told over and over again. And then out of that, of course, humanity tends to build societies and political structures that really put forth the man. And understandably so, the other side of creation here, the female side, struggles then against instances of oppression and being left out and being disempowered. And I think there is an argument here, actually I know there is an argument here by many against Christianity because of this dogma. But I think a close reading of the Bible definitely reveals that God never intended for the female side to be less than. He created a power structure that was intended to plug into Him no matter what, and made it so that the male and the female could coexist and act out each of their individual strengths on the planet. So I'm in Proverbs 8 through 11 today, and this is an odd place to start maybe, but bear with me and I will lay out my case, much like Solomon has been laying out his case throughout our reading so far of Proverbs. He's been laying out in a very lawyer-like fashion. He's been laying out a case for what wisdom is. And so far, we have been told that wisdom arises out of knowledge from God, rooted in understanding that God is to be feared and revered and glorified. And if we start there, then the knowledge that we gain out of that becomes wisdom. And then he's been building the case that wisdom then actually combined with opening up the heart creates understanding, and understanding, of course, is really where we want to live. So Solomon is in Proverbs 8 through 11 is laying out a case for what wisdom is, and really how would you identify it. I thought today my question getting into this topic would be, how would you personify wisdom? If I asked you to point to an example in your head, what would you come up with? What picture would you come up with? What would you point to if I wanted to see a tangible example of wisdom? And Solomon is laying out more of what that looks like, and he does give us an answer here of what he thinks we should be looking at if we want to see wisdom. So I'm going to go through some of the things that he says about wisdom. Wisdom is on the heights and at the gates of the city. This is the most prominent visible places, and this lines up with so far what he has said about wisdom, that it is obvious and it is loud. It says here, she cries out to men, take my instruction instead of silver or gold. And this is sort of the crux of where I want to go with this reading. Wisdom is personified here by Solomon as a female, as a woman. And there is a lot of discussion if you begin to look at through biblical scholars. There is a lot of discussion back and forth about why it is that Solomon personifies wisdom as a female. And there is, well, first of all, we talk about the root of wisdom. The Hebrew word of wisdom is actually female. We don't have it in English. We don't have male and female words the way that we write or speak, but you see it in other languages, and in Hebrew, again, it is, words are either female or male. In the Hebrew, wisdom is a female word, and that can mean just because it's a female word, Solomon decided to personify wisdom as a female. There are people who believe that he did that because he's talking to his son, and he's making a point that wisdom is to be desired, and he thinks that his male son would most desire a female. And I think that you can support that as well, because he's talking a lot about not going after harlots and staying in your marriage, and there is discussion there, and I think you could support that. But I'm sort of fascinated by the fact of what he chooses to use as a personification of wisdom. So bear with me. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what he says wisdom is. Wisdom dwells with prudence. She's where you find knowledge and discretion. She hates evil. She hates pride and arrogance and a perverted mouth. She walks in paths of righteousness to enrich her followers. A big thing is she sets up residence and calls to those who would forsake folly and live. So turning to wisdom is about life. She is a giver of life. Anyone who hates her loves death. Anyone who sins against her injures himself. And so then he also talks about the fact that wisdom is not afraid of more knowledge. So somebody who possesses wisdom, when there is a criticism, or they realize that they've thought in error, or they have come to a conclusion in error, they're not afraid of that. They're not offended by that. They are excited by that. They're happy to take in new information, happy to take in new knowledge. So wisdom is humble. Wisdom doesn't see herself as the end-all be-all. She doesn't believe that she is above God. She believes that she is in a hierarchy of knowing God, knowing who God is, and then obtaining knowledge. And that's a big deal, because Solomon makes a distinction between somebody who is wise in their own mind versus true wisdom in the last reading that we were going over. But here's where I think this gets interesting, because not only does Solomon give us this list of how to identify wisdom, how to know her when we see her, but he also says where we can look to see her, to see an example. And here it is. The Lord possessed wisdom at the beginning. All the earth sprang from her. As a master workman, she was there, and the Lord, so she is in God, she is from God, and with her, God created nature and creation. I guess you could interchangeably use those words. All of creation was made with wisdom. And so I went looking, and what I found about the word that is the basis for earth or soil or dirt is Adamah, and it is in Hebrew a female word. So I think this is really cool because I think about the figure of Mother Nature, and we see it in the Santa Claus movies is the first thing that pops into my head. But Mother Nature is a bone of contention from the pagan worldview. It's in contrast. It's in struggle with Christian and pagan worldviews. And this is where a lot of people get off onto the wrong road, is that they see earth, soil, dirt, all the creation that is around us. They see that and see how important it is. And it is very important, I think, to God. I think we're getting lots of evidence of that. But they see that importance, and they see how we come from earth and how we return to earth, and they elevate it to Mother Nature. They elevate it to something that is equally deified, something to worship. And I think we could properly say Father God and Mother Earth. Mother Earth doesn't have to be a wrong statement if we understand that Mother Earth really is wisdom. Wisdom is female. The earth and the soil is female. This is something that's rooted in the language that we already know, that we come from this earth, but the earth isn't equal. It isn't an equal God with God. It came from God. So this wisdom came out of God. It is a female side. It is a female representation. I don't think there's any other way to see it, because the soil really does gives birth to man, the first man, and then out of that man we get the first woman. But the female was already here in the wisdom that is endowed throughout all of creation, and that was used to create creation. The problem throughout the millennia has been that humans take that knowledge, that truth, and they elevate it to an equal with God, or sometimes they elevate it, in some cases, above God. But I think that here Solomon is making a nod to the fact that wisdom is throughout. We can go out and we can look closely at the creation around us, what God made and put us in and left us to tend. We can see wisdom throughout it. And the wisdom is that balancing side. We have male and female throughout all of nature. You cannot have one without the other. It doesn't work. The design is balanced. Every human understanding of a God and of our earth throughout all time understands this. And any attempt to create a Christian dogma where God is male and the men are supposed to be put forward and the female is not important just doesn't match with what God has done. And his Bible is here and creation is here to support that both male and female are equal. They're equally important, but they have different roles. And we're going to see that more and more as we read along. It doesn't have to be bad just because the earth is so valuable to us. And when I say earth, I do mean the planet, but I also mean the soil, the land, the dirt. This is all the same word and in Hebrew. And again, if you know anything about me, words matter. Where they come from matters. We are getting clues about the importance here, but we can acknowledge that importance in our languaging without suggesting that the earth is an entity, this female entity that is somehow equal with or above God. So, an interesting direction that I didn't see this going until I actually sat down to record. And I'm super grateful for this little bit of curious insight, because it's something that it's a sweet little morsel that I'm going to ponder the whole rest of the day. I pray that God is blessing you today, and that He brings you back to study with me again tomorrow. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.